Oh, hello guys. What's that? A mental health check-in in which I'm looking like a crazy 5th grade art teacher. Everything's going all right up here, I promise. Editing Arden, realizing that I should have put a big old fat trigger warning on this entire video because, oh my gosh, trigger warning. Trigger warning about obsessive thoughts, anxiety, versions of self-harm, all of it. Just trigger warning. Blah! Trigger warning. Before we get into all that this video has in store for you, and let me tell you, it's quite a lot, let's thank our sponsor, BetterHelp, which is very appropriate for this video. So thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Is there something interfering with your happiness or your ability to achieve a goal, maybe like crippling anxiety in the era of this little pandy we've got going on outside? BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with a professional licensed therapist. And you can start communicating with them within 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional counseling done safely and securely online. There is a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's 14,000 plus counselor network, which may not be locally available in certain areas. The service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so that you never have to be in an uncomfortable waiting room as in traditional therapy. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available if needed. So visit betterhelp.com/rose to get 10% off your first month. So join the over 1 million people currently taking charge over their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. So once again, for my viewers, we have a special code. It's betterhelp.com/rose, and you can get 10% off your first month. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Now let's chit chat. So for most of us, this past year has been sort of one large stint of sitting alone with our thoughts. And in a really weird way, it's sort of allowed me to confront a lot of things about my mental health and my anxiety that I didn't really want to think about too hard before. And I'm seeing that as a general pattern across most of my social media as well. I'm seeing a lot of introspective thinking. I'm seeing a lot of anxiety, like a lot of anxiety in the general population. Probably because we're not spending a lot of time outside and we're not spending a lot of time hearing very good news online. To preface this, if you've never had one of these little chit chats with me, hi, my name is Arden. I pull out my hair, I bite all of the parts of my bodies off, whether that's like chewing my lip or chewing on my nails, or chewing the skin off of my nails, plucking at my toenails, plucking hair off my body. You name a self-destructive, repetitive behavior that you can do, and I probably have done it and or are currently doing it. I always assumed growing up that I was a very happy kid, and I think I was. And I had this idea that as I got older, I just got more anxious, when in reality, I think a lot of the roots of my anxiety were always there. I just didn't have the experience to be able to recognize those feelings and then deal with them in a healthy way. When I first started experiencing trichotillomania, I was in high school, and I mean, you can imagine a high school girl walking into school without any eyebrows or any eyelashes is a very shocking thing. And especially if you were like a cheerleader and super peppy and happy, and generally speaking, you seemed like a really bubbly, excitable person, when in reality, there was like a very thick layer of anxiety over my entire life, and I had no idea it was there. Trichotillomania is so connected to anxiety, it's not even funny. It's basically, at least as far as I have been able to recognize it in myself and what I've read online and talked to a few therapists about, it's the best way that my body can self-soothe. So if I'm really stressed out, I've got a lot of work on, and my mind is running a mile a minute, the easiest thing to do is sort of revert back to something that I know will soothe me. So whether that's biting my lip, I'm literally tearing at my nails like right now as I'm talking. So like these behaviors that are repetitive, they're instinctual. I don't have to think about them. They just happen. And the only way to make them stop is by actively thinking, you are doing this thing, you need to stop doing this thing. And in the beginning, I was really bad about that. Like in high school, like I said, I had no eyebrows, no eyelashes. It was a pretty rough time. And as I got older, I got a bit better about it, but instead of focusing on my eyelashes and my eyebrows, I started taking it out on other areas of my body. So whether that was like plucking hair off my arms with tweezers, or my legs, or, you know, ripping apart my cuticles so often that like if I didn't have a box of Band-Aids in my house, I would be like bleeding over all of my furniture. So all of these were self-soothing coping mechanisms, and they could happen when I was really, really stressed out. They could happen, and more recently they've been happening when I have downtime and I'm just chilling and my brain is going into like autopilot and I'm not really thinking about anything. It's very easy for me to get into picking or get into, you know, some sort of like obsessive, repetitive behavior. And the funny thing is, I never really realized how obsessive it was or how linked it was to forms of OCD, because they are sort of all of these like trichotillomania, dermatillomania, you know, all of these sort of obsessive behaviors are linked in a lot of ways to OCD or ICD, impulse control disorder. Although it's really hard to categorize them, right? I would get really angry if someone would stop me in the middle of a cycle of it. So if I'm like, you know, picking at a hangnail and Will's like, I can see you picking at your hangnail, stop doing that, you're gonna bleed. It would make me angry because I want to complete the mission. I want to have that like satisfaction at the end of it. And that's when I started realizing that it ties in a lot to obsessive behaviors. I always sort of just thought it was something that I was doing and not really getting anything out of it. And then I realized as I got a little older that I was getting something out of it. I was being soothed by these really destructive behaviors that hurt a lot of times. Like, I would anticipate the pain of pulling my skin, knowing that it was going to bleed and rip and tear and be painful. And I would know that was going to happen, and I would always, like, be waiting for that, which is, like, weird to recognize in yourself. Anyway, so that's a little background on what I've been up to, all right? What I've been tinkering around with these past couple years. Now COVID happens. I'm spending more time at home than ever. And you would think that would make things like significantly worse, right? But I already work from home. I'm a YouTuber. I'm like an internet person. I stream. So like it wasn't that weird to be locked down. And you know what freaking happened? And I'm kind of a little peeved about it. Get comfortable in here. You know what really started happening, and I was really mad about it, was I started getting intrusive thoughts. So I've had like intrusive thoughts in the past. But I saw on my Instagram someone posted a comment in response to my like, what do you guys want to talk about on our little mental health chat? Someone mentioned that they have realized that they're showing a lot of agoraphobia sort of in their situational agoraphobia, where they like are starting to get afraid of the outside world. They are only finding comfort at home. And I realized that that was happening to me quite a bit. I was struggling to like just see everything as normal when I keep hearing such disastrous news. Trigger warning, because I'm going to talk about something that's kind of sad. Well, very sad and horrible and tragic. But the young woman who went missing in the UK, when she went missing and her body was finally found, and it turns out that it was a police officer who, you know, murdered her, and it was just like a really traumatic thing to read about. I struggled to leave my apartment in any capacity after I heard about that, just because it made me feel so unsafe and scared in my surroundings. But I keep having these little tic-tac moments that are adding up to an overall very negative worldview of my surrounding. And I'm trying to beat that away with a stick. Like, I'm trying so hard not to be scared of the outside world. And I never really have been in the past, or maybe I have, but I've sort of pushed it aside. I started working out really heavily when I started going more deeper into lockdown. I used to rock climb, but because like gyms aren't open, I don't really have a chance to do that anymore. And I always liked rock climbing because it made me feel strong. And something that comes along with feeling physically strong is that if someone were to like come up to me and mess with me, I always felt like I could somewhat handle myself, if that makes sense. And that gave me a sense of power and a sense of agency, like no one could mess with me, you know what I mean? And I felt that way until I started like not being able to work out and not being able to do my own thing. So I started doing it at home and weightlifting and feeling good about my body and feeling strong, and all of that is great. But I'm realizing more and more how that original good idea that I had of sort of reinforcing my feeling of inner strength by working out has in a really weird way made me hyper alert to outside things. Okay, so like just literally 30 minutes ago, I took the trash down. I was just going to take the trash down, and a door that is not usually open in my apartment was open on a stairwell to the left of like the garbage chute, which is like so not a big thing at all. Someone obviously just like forgot to close a door. But in my head, before I had even passed through that doorway, I was like, I'm gonna keep my eye on that doorway in case someone is hiding behind that door or trying to catch me off guard or something. Keep in mind, there's no way for anyone in that stairwell to be able to tell if someone's like coming down the elevator or anything. Like there's no way there is someone waiting for me there. But my anxiety and my sense of despair in the world just makes me see like bogeymen around every single corner. And it's so frustrating. We had our first really, really good sunny day out in London, and I was so excited. Like, we have not been able to like be out and about in such a long time, and it was sunny, and like Will and I were standing out in the sun, and we were gonna hop on the tube for 2 stops, like wearing our masks, being safe, doing our whole thing. But we were gonna go up to a local park that's a little bit too far for us to walk. So we get on the train, or we get on the train platform, and it's like, it's one of those open train platforms, it's above ground. So we're walking down and we're passing people, and I realize how uncomfortable I am around other people now, which was never me. Like I am such a extroverted person usually. I'm usually really fine being around strangers. But I was just getting really anxious seeing everyone sitting not even near each other, like just taking up seats. So there's just like more people than usual. And we keep walking and we get to sort of like the mid to end of the line where there's like a little bit of space and there's no one really around. And a guy, like an older gentleman, comes and walks up and walks down the length of the train and comes and sits directly behind us, but still like 5 or 6 feet away. Not close, but just behind us. And the whole time I was standing in the sun trying to like, you know, be excited about the sun and just relax and like feel good that day. I was having intrusive thought after intrusive thought about how this man behind us was going to push us onto the train tracks. I was like thoroughly convinced that we were going to get pushed onto this train track. And I cannot tell you why. And then in that moment, I had about like 3 or 4 different like contingency plans in case I saw him move. If he pushed Will first, what I would do. If he pushed me first, what I would do. All of these like crazy, like just insane. Even saying it just makes me sound like insane. But just like obsessive, really hard to tamp down thoughts. And even now as I'm saying it, I'm feeling the anxiety of it. And I've realized how primed I've become to anxious thoughts in public. And I think a lot of us are dealing with this, just based on what I've seen on my Instagram. I got so many responses to my mental health question saying that people were dealing with similar things, and it made me feel so much better because I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. This, like, other people are dealing with this too. This is something that I have never had to really deal with before. So yeah, and like, I really do have to chalk it up to the fact that we're just hearing bad news constantly, and we're hearing about like women being treated really poorly constantly, and scary things happening all the time, and none of it is good for us. Like, it's so good to be cautious, 1000%, it's so good to be cautious, but on a sunny day in the middle of London, the first sunny day of the year, when you should just be basking in the sun and relaxing, why is someone going to be pushing you onto the train tracks? You're going to be fine. I'm trying my hardest now to just recognize those thoughts, because also I have dealt in my personal life with someone who had really bad health anxiety. And those thoughts are so similar. Like, the intrusive, repetitive, scary thoughts of something are very similar. The idea of like, you know, I'll use plane crashes as an example because that's another one of my anxiety triggers. I'm pretty scared of planes, although I do have to go on them usually pretty regularly. I'm pretty scared of planes, especially like the night before I have to take a flight. I have a lot of obsessive, repetitive thoughts going on. But this is the issue. An anxious person reads statistics and sees themselves in the 0.000000001% chance. A normal person reads the statistic and sees themselves as the 99%. Okay? So like in plane crashes, it never happens. It never happens. But if it was going to happen, why wouldn't it happen to me? You know? That's the anxious brain thought. If it's gonna happen, why wouldn't it happen to me? And I think that is the root of the whole issue, is that I'm having that internal battle constantly. If something bad is going to happen, why wouldn't it happen to me? And I think I'm still trying to work through what my coping mechanisms are for those repetitive thoughts. So far, my favorite thing, which is like not really a trick, but it's something that I have heard about a billion times over, and it really does work for me, and it's worked for me for years, is that I count to 7 repeatedly with my breath. So like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like repetitively counting my breath, slowing my breath down on the beat of this count. And I choose 7 because it's a number that my brain has to work to remember, if that makes sense. Like 10 is a little too easy for my brain. 5 is a little too easy for my brain. For whatever reason, 8 is a little too easy for my brain. But 7 is one where I have to work a little bit harder to remember to stop at 7 and start over. And that sounds really silly, but you just need something that your brain can focus on, because otherwise it'll focus on anything else going on in the world and all of the anxious thoughts that you're having, right? So I have to use that, I would say, most nights to get to sleep. I can get to sleep relatively easily, but I do have a lot of those like restless, anxious thoughts right before I go to bed, especially if I haven't been like particularly active during the day, which is most of lockdown. Another one, if I'm having like a really bad pick day, like say I'm like really going out my eyelashes, or like I'm really chewing on my lip, or my left thumb is already bleeding and I'm going for my right thumb. If it's happening, like say I'm in the living room when that behavior is happening, I like to move into another room or a different area or a different space, because I find that those obsessive, repetitive, soothing patterns only happen if I've gotten really comfortable and I'm really sat down. But if I get up and move around, I stop participating in those behaviors as much. The other thing I realize is that your brain just is working on train tracks. All right, you're just like, it's just chug-a-lugging down a track that you've already worn down like 50 billion times. And so a track like my trichotillomania track in my brain is so worn down and so comfortable, I don't even think about it anymore, you know? All of those tracks, you really have to work hard to shift that focus, you know? You gotta work extra hard. So whether that's having someone around you that can like make you aware of it, that would be super helpful. Also, another thing that literally Will was telling me about this a couple days ago, but I was talking to him at night while I was going to sleep about the train thing and about how I like was convinced this man was going to push us on the train tracks. And Will was like, those are just like, those are intrusive thoughts. Those are anxious, intrusive thoughts. And what he was saying, which is very true, was that you have to not just shove those thoughts away. Don't just be like, that's ridiculous. Stop. Don't think about that. That man is not going to push you on a train. Stop that. Don't just push it away, because then it's still there. It's still looming. It's still like, could come back and get you. You have to accept that idea, recognize that it's an anxious, intrusive thought, and then let it pass naturally so that you don't get that spike of anxiety and adrenaline that comes with it. Because I think for most anxious bodies, we're a little addicted to the anxiety, right? Like we're a little addicted to the idea that you're always anxious, so it's almost your comfort zone. No level of anxiety is particularly normal, you know, especially if it's something that you feel like actively tires you out and haunts you every day. That doesn't have to be your normal or like your safe zone. I got a question on my Instagram that was like, how are you though? Like seriously, how are you? This is how I am. I'm an absolute bundle of anxiety. I'm headed back to LA next week for the first time in so long. And I've got a billion different things to be anxious about, and I'm entertaining every single one of them. And it's not great, but I'm working on it. I'm trying my best to count to 7 and breathe and chill and try to do my workouts and feel good about all of it. But, you know, we're just going one day at a time, if I'm being honest. Let's do some rapid fire questions. I got this one, which was interesting. How do you deal with existentialism that comes with anxiety or depression, etc.? I get really existential before bed, like right before I'm about to go to sleep. And that can come with a lot of doom spiraling thoughts, a lot of death-related nasty thoughts. And the number one thing that helps me when I start spiraling, and I can feel it like a sort of panic creeping over me, is to count to 7 and breathe. I'm not kidding. That is my number one coping mechanism. I should probably add a few more things to my repertoire, but that is my one thing. Yeah, drawing attention back to your actual living body is sometimes a really good thing. I used to think that like listening to my own heartbeat or like listening to my own breath would make me a little bit too anxious, but actually just like slowing down and appreciating where you are is the only way to keep yourself from being like, everything is crashing around me. What's gonna happen? Like, oh man, anxiety is a real bitch, huh? Favorite ways to reset when you're anxious? I like to swim or shower and then make some art. That's another great thing. If you have, if shower time helps you, sometimes showering can make me feel reset. I find that like showering and then doing my skincare really methodically can sort of like give my body a little more life. Like I feel a little better about myself. Like really take the time to put on body lotion all over my body and rub it in and feel like I'm really treating myself. You know, that can really help me reset for sure. Do you have days where you feel like you can't do anything? If so, what are your tips? Absolutely, especially if I've gone through a period of either a lot of work on or just like tons of negative, anxious, repetitive thoughts wearing me down to a point of like, I cannot do this anymore. If I have one more level of responsibility, I like am gonna curl up in a ball and just absolutely shut down. Sometimes I just let myself do that. Like some days when you're like, I can't anymore, it's okay to just literally give yourself a fucking break. Like lay in bed a little extra longer, or if you know you've got a weekend free coming up soon, take that day to literally do shit all. There is nothing better than just letting yourself sit if you need to. Also another thing that I've started doing, which we'll call it a healthy coping mechanism, is I've started re-downloading a lot of the video games that I loved in my childhood. So like I'm a huge Nintendo fan. I love Nintendo. I mean, I play Animal Crossing basically as a career now on Twitch. But I really, really love Yoshi's Woolly World, Yoshi's Crafted World, and then Pikmin Pikmin 3, which is on the Switch. Getting back to something that I remember giving me a lot of comfort when I was younger. It makes me feel really comforted even today. Like, my favorite comfort movies are Studio Ghibli movies because I watched them as a kid. Like, My Neighbor Totoro was my first Studio Ghibli movie I ever watched. And I can watch any Studio Ghibli film and feel instantly soothed. Like, it is the thing that soothes me. If you wonder why people repeat the same TV show over and over again, it's not just because the TV show is really good that they've chosen, like The Office or Parks and Rec or anything that Michael Schur does. It's also because our brains are used to it, and if we're people who suffer with really bad anxiety, the repetitive nature of the TV show, knowing that you can anticipate what's going to happen next, is something that your brain craves. So if you're someone who's constantly going back to the same TV shows as comfort, you may suffer from anxiety. Or you just like 3 shows, and that's totally fine. But it is really interesting. So I would say find your comfort TV show, find your comfort movies, and don't feel bad in indulging in those things if they make you feel comfortable and safe. Has your trick got worse during the pandemic? I was doing so good before it. I wouldn't say my trick has necessarily gotten worse. I think it's changed. So I used to just strictly pull my eyelashes and my eyebrows out, and I still kind of do that with my eyebrows. But with my eyelashes, I've started doing this thing where I like break them off halfway. I don't know why I do it. But it's almost like I'm pretending like I'm trying to curl them like this, but then I try to break them off so I can pull the whole thing off. It's very odd. But anyways, I actually feel like that has actually gotten better, but I think the intrusive sort of like death spiraling thoughts that are really horrible to experience have gotten worse. I'm hoping they get better soon. I'm hoping that I can sort of like conquer these thoughts. Someone asked what to say to get help. I know I need help. I don't know how, and it makes me so anxious. That's another thing, is that a lot of times the very thing that you are fearful of is asking for help or wanting to say something but not knowing exactly what language you need to use to say it. And all I can tell you is that if you book in with a therapist or you talk to a professional, they have seen every single facet of what you are worried about or thinking about. And they're going to be sympathetic to that. So I would talk to a therapist. I would talk to a mental health professional. I would just make that conscious decision to fight your anxiety around it and just do it. And I know that's not like the easiest solution to give, but when I was having those thoughts, when I was having thoughts like, I'm not messed up enough to have therapy. Like, I'm fine. I can deal with my own stuff. I'm not that bad. And I feel bad that I'm taking up a spot for someone else to be heard because they probably have it a lot worse than me. That was like my constant anxiety thought. Like, I don't have it bad enough. Someone else has it worse. So like they should deal with their stuff so that they have the time to do that. But that is also another anxious thought. You really do have to sort of like peel back all of the different layers of anxiety that are constantly playing around with your current mental state. And you know what might help as well is if you tell someone, like a friend, like if you're like, hello friend, I really need help with this, then they might be able to then help you make the steps to booking an appointment or doing whatever it is that you need to get yourself through to the next thing. If you have a partner that's supportive, if you have a parent or a guardian that's supportive, whatever it is, trust that that person probably has your best interest at heart and they might be able to help you make those steps that are difficult for you in the moment. Like, I know if I ever needed anything or if I felt like I was too anxious to book an appointment for myself on the phone or something like that, I could ask Will to do that and he would do that for me. So like, try to find, if you really, really cannot bring yourself to do it yourself, then I would talk to a friend about it, or talk to a loved one about it. And also, there are tons of support groups for all of this kind of stuff online. So if you need to have any kind of reassurance that you're not the only person going through what you're feeling, you have those vast resources all over the internet to relate to and understand, and probably get some advice from people who are in very similar situations to you as well. So yeah, I just know that you're not alone, and that being anxious about actually putting your words into action or trying to get help, that's like the first step, is like recognizing that you need it. So like congrats and hats off for that alone. Now let's get you to the next step. I'm nervous for my mental health when the pandy is over. What a shock to the system. Love the way that's phrased. Same. I am a very anxious optimist, which is a weird thing to be. Like, I think the best in most situations, but occasionally have overwhelming negative thoughts about things. I, generally speaking, am very excited to be out in public again. This first outing that I had in public, where I was convinced someone was going to push us in front of a train, has sort of shown me that I probably need to be a little bit more delicate with myself as I go out. But I am still very, very positive thinking when it comes to all of this. I also think that hopefully other people are going to be aware, like we'll all be more gentle around each other, knowing that this has been an anxious time for a lot of people. I know I'm going to be giving strangers a lot of space and a lot of leniency, because I know everyone's been going through it, and I hope that we're all going to do the same for each other. We'll see if that actually happens, but I'm hoping for some peace, okay? And final question, how often do you feel at peace with yourself? How often do you not? Speaking of peace, I would say, if I had to say off the top of my head right now, in the current mental state that I'm in, how often I feel at peace, I would say 50% of the time. I think I've got like a 50-50 split, where I'm not always at peace and I'm not always anxious. Like, and sometimes it's a mix, and sometimes I will be completely at peace and I'll have a wave of anxiety, or I'll be completely anxiety riddled and then whoop, I'm like feeling fine and I'm totally soothed and I'm good. So right now it's a 50-50 game. I'm just all over the place, and I think it's kind of nice to just be able to admit that and not feel like I need to be, don't want to say actively fixing it, because I'm always trying to actively fix it, but to recognize that you're in that place is a nice feeling. Even if it doesn't feel great to be in that place, it's just good, because it means that you can get somewhere now. You know what I mean? You can try to help yourself as much as you can. So yeah, I'm at peace 50% of the time, and I'm an absolute ball of nerves 50% of the other times. So yeah. But anyways, thank you again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Very kind of you guys. And thank you guys for watching. I like doing these videos because A, I think it's just really important to talk about this kind of stuff. I genuinely do. Not just as like a personal release, but just so like we're all in this together and like we're aware of it. We're all doing this thing. We're all living the same human life, okay? And we're all coping with it differently. So I think it's good to put this out there so that if someone else is feeling like, what are these crazy thoughts I'm having? Don't worry, someone else is having them too. I am. Probably halfway around the world from you. But here we are, doing the same thing, going through the same anxious spirals, and we're gonna get out of them. We're gonna get out of them eventually. Just breathe, count to 7, do what you can, watch your favorite TV show again for the 50th time, and maybe, just maybe, tomorrow will be a better day. And on that note, I hope you do, in fact, have a better day today. Let me know if you have any other thoughts in the comments down below. Sound off if you want to chat about anything, want to get something off your chest. Leave it down in the comments down below. I'm going to be hanging out for a little bit so that I can say hi and hello and all the good things. And I'll see you guys for the next video. Bye!